Welcome to Improving the Bottom Line. Our presenter today is Al Bates, PhD. As a reminder, course materials are for personal use only. Al is chairman and president, as well as founder of the Profit Planning Group, a research and executive education firm headquartered in Boulder, Colorado. The firm works exclusively in the area of corporate financial planning. Please enter questions into the Zoom Q&A box and use the chat box for comments. We will address questions at the end. Now I'll turn it over to Al.
Thank you, Janet. Glad to be with everybody today to talk about my favorite subject, which is making more money. That is helping companies be more profitable. As I looked at the participant list, though, there are 111 participants, only one of which is listed as an owner. And everybody else might be saying improving profitability, nice idea, but so what? Well, the reality is that companies that make more money can afford to have higher salaries. In fact, they do, and I can prove that statistically. They also have better fringe benefits. The people smile more. So there's something in it for everybody, not just the owners of the company. If you have a handout, join me in there. And as we start, 3 ground rules. Number 1 is we'll try to do some questions at the end, but my guess is we'll not have time. So you can ask me a question privately. I'll tell you how to do that at the very end so you don't have to make a fool of yourself in front of everybody else. You can ask a question privately and I will answer it privately. The next 2 are really important. When I tell you to write, I want you to write. There's going to be a fair amount to write, and we do not have a lot of time. We have a lot of material to cover. And number 2, when I tell you to go to an exhibit, go to the exhibit. Let's give that a shot. Go to exhibit 1. Well, look, there's exhibit 1 on the screen, and it says, what are we going to do for 45 minutes today together? I want to do 3 things. Number 1, I want to review what I call the profit structure of the industry. And what that says is distribution in aggregate is not a particularly highly profitable sector of the economy. The reason it isn't is it's so blooming competitive. It is the most competitive segment of the entire economy. However, individual companies break out of that. So we'll talk about maybe profitability is not great in aggregate, but individual companies can do a lot better. And hopefully the 111 companies here today will be the ones that do a lot better. The second point will identify what I call the key pressure points in improving profitability. If we're going to break out of the herd, what do we have to do? Is it raise sales, cut inventory? What's involved in that? I'll have some highly counterintuitive ideas that may shock you about that issue. And then at the very end, we'll try to develop an action plan to say, how much better do I have to do each year? How much do I have to improve all the things that drive profitability? Great. So we got 3 topics. Let's start with the first one, the profit structure of the industry. On exhibit 2, I have got a typical firm in distribution. I live in Colorado. I like to call my companies by different names. So if you notice on exhibit 2, my company's called Mountain View. You live in Colorado, you think names like that are real swift. So forgive me. Every company is different. So when you look at these numbers, you're going to say, this isn't my company. Let me assure you of the following, and listen closely. Everything I will say about this company is true for your company. When I talk about how it's going to improve results, this is how you need to improve results. So we have a typical company based upon our database of about 20,000 distributors, but nobody is exactly typical, but trust me, we're close. Well, that's a $25 million company, and 2 lines down, it's got a gross margin of 25% of revenue. So I buy things for 75 cents, sell them for $1, keep a quarter. So far, so good. Down below that, I've got my expenses, and I broke them into 2 categories: payroll and fringe benefits and all other. Payroll and fringes includes everybody's salary, everybody's bonus, everybody's commission, everybody's everything, plus Medicare, Social Security, workers' comp insurance, health insurance, and 401k retirement programs. It's fully loaded. And then all other is everything that's not payroll: rent, utilities, depreciation, interest, bad debts, those sorts of things. And here's our first everything applies to you. Notice that payroll is a lot bigger than everything else put together. For every distributor in the world, payroll is usually somewhere around 2/3 or so of total expenses. So when we start talking about trying to improve profitability, we're going to have to wave at payroll at least a little bit. I will not reduce payroll, I promise you that, but we'll talk about being more productive, if you will, but I can't just say, well, we're going to turn off the lights and be more profitable. I got to deal with payroll in a meaningful way. If I take my expenses, which are now 5,750,000, subtract from my gross margin, I got a profit pre-tax of $500,000. First number to write down. I believe it's blank in your handout. On the right-hand side, my bottom line is 2%. Every dollar of revenue generates 2 pennies of profit, excuse me. That's a little puny, but as I said, distribution is such an incredibly competitive industry. We tend to have lower numbers than we'd be happy with if we could. So that's where we are. That's going to be most of what we'll discuss today. But down at the bottom, I've got some other stuff, and I don't want to make you an accountant, but I got to deal with some accounting stuff just for a second. Trust me, you'll live through this. I know there's some salespeople in the room, so you may faint, but nobody's going to die. What we're going to do is we're going to take those expenses, which were 5,750,000, broken into payroll and fringes and everything else, and we're now going to break them into fixed and variable, whatever that means. Fixed expenses are basically overhead expenses. And the real key when we start doing a little playing some games here, fixed expenses will remain constant. They only change when an action is taken. So if you hire somebody new into the office, an additional employee, you've raised your payroll up in the top, you've also raised your fixed expenses. If your landlord raises your rent, you didn't plan on that, but he did it anyway, but it's still, you have to take an action. In sharp contrast, variable expenses change automatically because we have more sales. And so we're going to focus on that as you don't get to choose, it happens automatically. So sales commissions are in there, bad debts are in there, interest on accounts receivables in there, a fair number of items. And if you notice, what I've done is I've made the fixed expenses 4,500,000, and I've made the variable expenses not 1,250,000, no, 5% of revenue. So if we raise sales, the fixed expenses will remain 4,500,000. The variable expenses will be 5% of a higher number. If we do the unthinkable and lower sales, fixed expenses will be 4,500,000 and variable expenses will be 5% of a lower number. Well, that was simple enough. We got a company. And again, everything I'll say about this company applies to you. Before we do that, let's go to exhibit number 3 and ask ourselves, why do you say distribution is a low profit industry? Because it's so competitive. And what I have on exhibit 3 is what I'm calling ancient history for PBT, profit before taxes. And this is ancient history, but I've done it because there are 2 recessions and 2 growth periods there. So what we can see is, in 2001, profit went way down for a reason, and then it went back up, and in 2009, it went way back down for a reason. And we have a concept I like to call regression to the mean. What that means is we're kind of victims of the economy. When the economy is good, we make a lot more money. When the economy is not so good, we don't make so much money, but we float up and down. Here's the problem. As a group, we float up and down. Individual companies, however, do not have to float. Individual companies can break out of this. But if we're going to say, well, I'm just one of the boys out here, just one of the companies out here, you're going to be a victim of the recession. And I'd like to break out of that if we can. So, all right, how are we going to break out? That is brilliantly laid out in Exhibit 4. Exhibit 4 is our first key exhibit, which talks about how much profit should we make. And what I have on the vertical axis is PBT. And then on the years, I've started with 2020 last year, and notice it's 22%. So we're starting right where we were. And I'm going to, if I could, every year increase my PBT. Every year, not in good years, but not in bad years. Every single year, increase my PBT and end up at somewhere around 6%. Now, when I do this program for top management, they get all excited. Oh man, he's going to take my bottom line from 2% to 6%. This guy's really good. But then I remind them we're going to do it in 5 years, and then they all rebel. That's way too long. We're going to do it in 1 year. A lot of companies have the 1-year plan. You may have seen a 1-year plan. It's a wonderful plan. Does it work? So what I'm going to try to suggest to you, can we go slow but steady wins the race? Can we triple our bottom line? Is that possible? Yes. Not everybody, but hopefully the 111 people in this room, we can triple our bottom line, but it's going to take us a while. I'm going to put a conclusion on the board. It's on exhibit 21, but you do not have to go back there because it's already written down for you. But if you want to go to 21 and join me, here's our first key conclusion. A realistic profit goal for some companies is to triple PBT, but probably over a 5-year period. Slow but steady wins the race. That is a prime directive. I can use a Star Trek terminology here. This is what we're going to do. We're going to try to improve our performance if we can over time and live to tell about it. All right, that's pretty good. That leads us to the second of our 3 goals. The first one was, where are we? The second one is, what do I do to get better? What do I do to make my company more profitable when the other companies are maybe not more profitable? And that takes us to exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8. These exhibits are identical. They're all identical in structure, not in numbers, but in structure. If you notice on exhibit 5, to set things up, vertical axis again, PBT, profit before taxes, 2%. And then going across the horizontal axis, we're going to improve something, 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 25. So on every exhibit that we're going to look at, 5, 6, 7, and 8, we'll have PBT on the vertical axis, an improvement on the horizontal axis. We're going to look at what I like to call the critical profit variables. I call them the CPVs, the critical profit variables, the things that drive profit. There are 5 of them. On exhibit 5, we have the first 2 for the price of 1, inventory and accounts receivable. So what it says going across there is we're going to lower our inventory or lower our accounts receivable by 5%, 10, 15, 20, 25 with a gigantic assumption. And that gigantic assumption is without having sales go down. If you lower inventory too much, sales could fall. But for right now, ignore that reality. Gee, those graphs look a little flat to me. And so what we're going to say is, of the CPVs, of the critical profit variables, inventory on our accounts receivable are what I like to call the little 2. Okay, they're kind of interesting. They're kind of nice, but they're not real drivers of profitability. They're gigantic drivers of cash flow, but they don't drive profitability. In the entire focus of this 45-minute session, as opposed to the 6-hour session in Indianapolis, is we're going to focus on profit. Come to Indianapolis, we'll talk about cash. Well, if these are not big drivers, what are the big drivers? The big drivers start on exhibit 6. 6, 7, and 8 have the big 3. The first of these is the relationship between a sales increase and profit margin. So we're going across the horizontal axis, we're increasing sales. As we increase sales, watch this brilliance, fixed expenses stay the same and variable expenses for this company are 5% of sales. So the graph doesn't go straight up. It goes up pretty well, but it's got that factor driving. It's a nice, juicy graph, which says, this is brilliant. More sales helps. You probably knew that before you came here. So let's just say it's a redundancy, but it's true. Sales drives profit in a nice, meaningful way. And we'd like to make sure we understand that relationship that we have. Now, do me a favor. This is where you got to pay attention. Turn to exhibit number 7. But as you turn to exhibit number 7, keep looking at the screen. There's exhibit 6, exhibit 7. Exhibit 6, exhibit 7, exhibit 6, exhibit. I just love PowerPoint. I could do this all day. What this says is 6 was pretty steep. 7 is really steep. This is the first incredibly bad news, counterintuitive conclusion. This is the relationship between cutting expenses without lowering sales, cutting expenses and profit margin. And what it says is, gee, if we cut expenses, that has a bigger bang on profit than does raising sales. That's true, okay? You can't get around that. I'm sorry. It's a fact of life for every distribution company on the face of the earth. Now, it says nothing about wonderful other things like market share, okay? It says nothing about, gee, will people really rally around the flag for this idea? And let me tell you, people rally around the flag for sales growth. No one rallies around the flag for expense cutting. It's disgusting in most people's mind. It's terrible. It's not as good as the post office, but better than the Ebola virus. I mean, people hate it. But for right now, remembering those exhibits, it is a much steeper line. Go to exhibit number 8 with me and we'll look at the screen. Exhibit 8 is gross margin. And what it says, oh, gross margin is this is the biggest driver of all of profitability. Of all the things that we can do to drive more profit to the bottom line, getting more margin dollars on the existing sales is number one. So I've got a hierarchy. Number 1 is gross margin. Number 2 is expenses. Number 3 is sales. And 4 and 5, distant 4 and 5, inventory and accounts receivable. That's for profit only, not to motivate people, not to have people who are happy, not to gain market share, not to do anything, but it's crucial for what we want to do. Now, I told you that every graph I was going to put up here is the same graph for your company, but they're slightly different because every company is a little bit different. The concept is the same. Let me repeat this. For every company listening today, gross margin is the most important driver, expense control is second, sales is third. However, your graphs are going to be different. So we'll go to exhibit 9, if you would, with me, please, and let me give you something to help you figure this out for your company. And exhibit 9 says you must know this for your firm. So it'd be nice if you could figure this out. And it says go to discfirm.com. That's my company's website. Toggle to programs, go down to hands-on tools. And then if you toggle on down, you'll got a thing that says understanding the CPVs, the critical profit variables. You can then download an Excel template that will let you figure out your relationship between sales, expenses, gross margin, inventory, and accounts receivable for your company. However, it's password protected and you'll need to email me for the password. And you're saying, aha, you're going to send me a bunch of promotional material and have me buy something. Folks, I have nothing to sell. It's free of charge for a reason. I want you to make more money, but I want to know how many people out of the 111 actually do something. Are all 111 going to download this Excel file, or are 2 of you going to download the Excel file? I just kind of like to know, but it's out there. So you can reproduce those exhibits for yourself. Not exactly precisely, but you got some data to be able to do it. All right, with that done, let's talk about doing better. And I want to spit up my own slideshow here. Exhibit 21, summary and conclusions. Driving higher profit requires focusing on the right things. Yeah, gee, that's self-evident. You got to worry about the right things. But I try to suggest the right things are, this is redundant, but let me say it again, gross margin, expenses, and sales in that order. And if you lose sight of that order, you're in real trouble. Now, let me say, let's go to exhibit number 10. And we get to exhibit number 10, I've got something I call a rack suit plan. There are 4 bullet points here. I want you in your business, as you think about the future, address every one of these bullet points. You must address these bullet points. But I'm going to put together a rack suit. That is, I'm going to give you some bullet points that'll work for Mountain View, but your company's different. So you've got to put in your own numbers, but you must have the bullet points. If you walk away from the bullet points, you'll be in that great group of distributors who go up and down with the recession and the improved economy and never break out of the morass. I want you to break out. Bullet point number 1, increasing sales by at least the inflation rate plus a safety factor of, I put 3% on the board, write it down. What this says is every company, not just 1 or 2 companies, every company must do this one. I want your sales to grow 3% faster than inflation. Right now, inflation seems to be around 2%. So watch this seminar leader brilliance. 2 plus 3 is 5. So for right now, 5% sales growth. If you want to go 20, that's fine. You may regret it, but you need at least 5. It is a minimum. There is no maximum, but we at least need 5. If inflation goes to 10%, ooh, you need 13%. But for right now, as far as our eye can see, it looks like a 2% inflation world. So in the short run, we'll put 5% on the board, but remember, it's not 5, it's inflation plus 3. Everybody has got that. Number 2, everybody has a different number. I say force payroll to grow slower than sales to create something I'm going to call a sales to payroll wedge of 2%. What that means is employees want raises. And so if we can raise the sales by 5% minus this 2% wedge, we could let payroll go up by 3%. We could kind of all win together, if you will. Now, 3% increase in payroll is not going to allow anybody to buy a vacation home in Jackson Hole. I'm aware of that. But 3% is 3% and it keeps compounding. It's good. So I'd like to have a sales to payroll wedge, okay, of 2%. Sales go up, payroll goes up, sales goes up 3% faster than payroll. Your number may be 1%, your number may be 3%. Generally, 2% is a good number, but you got to figure it out for yourself. Number 3, you must increase the gross margin percentage, not the dollars, the gross margin percentage. And I'm using 0.2%. Again, your number may be 1/10, 3/10, 4/10. I'm going with 2/10. You got to increase the percentage though. Right now, our little sample company, good old Mountain View, is at 25% margin. I'm going to take it to 25.2. That's my change. And then the last one, we're going to decrease the other expenses. This is the non-payroll, non-expense dollars, the percent by 0.3%. And unless I'm getting totally confused, the other expenses were 7% of sales. We're going to now lower it to 6.7. You must have these 4. You got to put your own numbers. I'm going to talk about these 4 on the next few pages and what it means. Starting on exhibit number 11, which, oh my God, there are a lot of numbers on that page or what? This is terrible. That's not that bad. It says the profit impact of a sales to payroll wedge. So we're going to increase sales. We're going to increase payroll, but sales is going to go up 2% faster. The current results column is where we are right now. You should know this. You should almost have it memorized. In the last 2 columns, we're going to have a 2% sales to payroll wedge, but with 2 different assumptions. 5% sales growth or 15% sales growth. I will guarantee you all 111 of you like 15% better than you like 5. That's okay. You can't help yourself. Looking at the 5% sales growth, sales are up from 25 million to 26,250. That's 5%. Cost of goods and gross margin also go up by 5%. The payroll and benefits go up by 3%. And then to illustrate a point, I've got the other expenses going up by 5%. We could probably control them a little bit, but for right now, I just want to illustrate the impact of payroll by itself. If I total my expenses up, subtract them from margin, profit becomes 605,000. Is that right? Wow. Sales only grew by 5%. But if I could control the payroll at the same time, profit goes up a lot. And here's a moral. Sales and profit are 2 halves of the same canoe. That's an old consultant's phrase. It's dumb, but its concept is there. Sales and expenses must be planned at the same time. And that makes my bottom line 605,000, or going to the bottom, 2.3%. Okay, that's pretty good. What about 15% sales growth? This is the one we all want. Yeah, sales are up from 25 million to 28,750, 15%. Gross margin and cost of goods up by 15%. Payroll up by 15 minus 2 is 13%. Other expenses up 15 and the profit is 655. And you're saying to yourself, hold it. Why don't I raise sales 15% and payroll only goes up by 3? And the answer is because you can't. Okay, I've been doing statistical work in distribution for years. I've got a database of 20,000 distributors. You can't do it. Every time sales go up, you're adding a territory or you're adding a branch, you're doing something. They are joined at the hip. So if I can get a 2% wedge, I'm doing really good. Now, what it says there is I'm now making 655. And hey, Mr. Finance Guy, you think you're so smart. 655 is bigger than 605. That's correct. But I had to have 3 times as big a sales change to have my profit go not up by 105,000 in the middle column, by 155,000. I only gained 50,000 going from 5% to 15. And it's not linear. The relationship is not linear. And this is why I said earlier, if we can get 5%, we can make a lot more profit. And that's what we're trying to do. Now, it is possible if we really work at it, we can muck this thing all up. Absolutely. We can make this business not as good as it was. And that's by going to Exhibit 12, which says the sales to payroll gap, the potential to have a negative gap. And what happens a lot of times, particularly if you are adding a new territory or adding a new branch, is the expenses go up before the sales goes up. So now what we have in the current column is the same one we had before. And in the potential column, we have the same numbers we had before in the middle column, except when we get down to payroll, now I've got a 2% sales to payroll gap, but it's going the wrong way. Payroll is going up more than sales. Other expenses are going up like they did in the previous exhibit, but profit ends up being 445,000. Let me remind you by flipping up on the screen, if we control the payroll, profit went to 605. If we do not control the payroll, profit can actually go down. So we have got a real challenge, and that is, can we have sales go up without there being an equal increase in payroll? And the answer is yes, if we work at it. And what we're going to try to do right now is figure out, how do we work at it? What's involved in that process? There is one overriding thing that will help you do that. It is the key to life, and it's what is called transaction management or order economics. Exhibit number 13 has some setup data. If you recall, we were doing 25 million bucks of sales and had a bottom line of 500,000 or 2% of sales. Let's take an individual order. And again, every business is different, but let's take a fairly typical number, $500 average order. Some orders are for 35,000, but some orders are for $2. So we got a $500 average order, and 2% of 500 at the very bottom is $10. Now, what do you do for $10? Well, you order merchandise from suppliers, you bring it in, you inspect it, you put it on the shelf, you get an order from a customer, you process it in the office, you create some picking tickets, somebody goes out and picks it off the shelves, you assemble it, you inspect it, you put it on a truck, you take it off a truck at the customer's location, you inspect it again, and you let them pay you. When do they pay you? Whenever they blooming want to. You do that for 10 bucks. You should be in therapy. And so what we're going to do is change that relationship. If I look at it in terms of individual lines, the average line order is 125 bucks, which says there are 4 lines on every order. What we're going to try to do is improve economics of the order, which you can do. And if you do it, you'll have more sales without more payroll. Let's look at that if we could on Exhibit 14. I've got the number of orders, 52,632. What a dumb number, okay? And it's in the current column, and it's also in the potential column. Now, when we start thinking about getting more sales, the first thing we think about is, let's get more customers. That is the single most expensive way to drive sales up. Okay? I didn't say you shouldn't do it. It's important. But right now, let's take the customers we currently have and do more with what we have. So I'm going to keep the number of orders right where it is. Number of lines per order down on line 2. Put 1 asterisk next to that if you would, please. Okay, real quick, 1 asterisk. We're now at 4 lines on every order. I'm going to raise it to 4.1. And you should be saying, man, that's really small. Anybody could do that. Last time I looked, you're included in anybody. But what it says is we're going to keep doing add-on selling. And a lot of times salespeople get sloppy, or they get tired, or they get sick, and they don't do add-on selling. We could also enhance the product line with more stuff, so we could facilitate one-stop shopping. And we can also make customers more aware of what we sell. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to add 1/10 of a point. It's not much. And again, it's attainable. However, listen to this. If you can't measure this number, you got no chance of improving it. Okay, we might as well just end the session right now. You can't do it. You got to have a system that measure this. I've now got 215,000 lines ordered, but I haven't filled them. I got to go to my fill rate of my service level. Right now, we think it's 95. Nobody really knows what it is, but we're going to say it's 95. We're going to raise it to 95.2. Gee, doesn't that require more inventory? And the answer is yes. But if you were paying attention on exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8, and some of you were napping, but if you were paying attention, exhibit 5 said the inventory line was flat. and the sales line was steep. So adding inventory to get more sales is a great cost trade-off. It really is. It's a wonderful profit trade-off. Absolutely. If we do that, and fill rate should get 2 asterisks. I didn't quite get that. Put 2 asterisks on fill rate. If I do that, I have now got line 5, 205,432 lines filled. Yep. Here's something that's not just important operationally. This is important strategically. We have now got, as a company, 5,432 more lines that we fill. Our competitors collectively are getting 5,432 fewer lines. This is an incredible strategic approach because it lets you get more sales without them knowing you're getting more sales. It's not just great operationally, it's great strategically. Finally, line 6, this gets 3 asterisks. It's the most important. It's also the most difficult to do. We're going to take the average order line from 125 to 126 and a quarter. That's 1%. We're not going to do it by saying, hey, they ordered 3 cases of something, ship them 4. I don't think that works. We'll do it probably by raising prices, which we'll talk about in a couple of exhibits from now. But if I could do this, 205,000 lines filled times 126 is 25 million 9 change. That's an increase of 3.7%. And you're saying, whoop-de frigging do. Hey, hold on a second. 3.7% plus 2 points inflation is 5.7, plus the market as a whole grows by 2% is 7.7. Pretty soon we're going to be at that minimum of 5% without spending a lot more money on payroll. And that's why this exhibit is so important, is it doesn't raise sales. It raises sales without raising payroll as much. It's a crucial exhibit. I want you to go back to your company and do it. It's so important. I've got a summary conclusion. Number 21, we have to plan payroll in relationship to sales. I've got to think about them as 2, you're not going to say it again, are you? Yeah, I am. 2 halves of the same canoe. I'm sorry, consultants are stuck with these stupid things that they say. We have to plan payroll and sales at the same time. All right, what about raising that price? I snuck that in the last exhibit. Before we talk about raising price, let's go to exhibit 15, which again has a lot of numbers, but we'll live through this, I believe. Let's make it up with volume. There are people in the room, and you know who you are, who think we can make it up with volume. You're wrong. I got to prove you're wrong. In the current column where we are right now, if you remember, the average transaction was $500. The cost of goods is 75% because my gross margin is 25%, and I do 50,000 transactions. 50,000 transactions times $500 is 25 million. Now, in the worst case column, which is the second column, let's cut the price 5% to 475. But the problem is we're cutting the price so our suppliers don't cut our price. And in the worst case scenario, we sell the same 50,000 transactions. What this means is you cut price, everybody else cuts price. Nobody wants you to grab market share. So we all end up with the same market share, but at a 5% lower selling price, which means that sales go down by 5% from 25 million, 23,750, and the gross margin goes to 5 million. Notice, if you will, sales are down 1,250,000. Gross margin is down 1,250,000. It's dollar for dollar. The fixed expenses stay the same, but the variable expenses will save us. They'll go down, we'll be okay. So they go to 1,000,001. Fixed expenses stay 4,000,005. Total expenses are 5,000,006, and the profit, well, that's not that bad. It's 687.5, although that looks like a minus sign. You might want to drop this down. Profit has fallen a slight 237.5%. No big deal, nothing to worry about. That's a number. And what it says is, hey, if we're going to lower the price, we better sell more merchandise. So on the right-hand side of exhibit 15, it says possible case, not best case, possible. We're going to lower the price to 475, 5%. We're still going to pay 375, but now we're going to do 65,000 transactions. Next to that, please write the following. You got to write it quickly. Plus 31.1%. We're going to do 31.1% more activity in a particular business. However, we've cut the price. So 475 times 65,000 on the sales line is 31,147. Next to that, please write the following, plus 24.6%. So we had to work 31% harder to get not quite 25% more sales volume. Well, that's not that wonderful, but it's okay. Cost of goods, a number to write down here, plus 31.1%, because you're buying 31% more stuff from your suppliers at the same price. They get 31.1% more. And if I were a supplier, you know what I'd tell you? Go for it. Okay, you're a real hitter. Okay, you're working for the man. Ooh, gross margin is missing. So let's write this down. 6,557,400. 6,557,400. And next to that, a wonderful number, plus 4.9%. Are you kidding me? I work 31% more for only 5% more dollars. I will be okay. Look, I've got fixed expenses. I remember what you said. I've got fixed expenses. We'll be okay. And so, yeah, the variable expenses go up, but the fixed expenses stay the same. We are in Fat City. Profit's going to be, is it going to go up? Of course, profit's going to go up. Profit's going to end up being $500,018. So by working 31% harder, you can make 18 more dollars. Now, if you go to UID at the beautiful Marriott in downtown Indianapolis, the JW Marriott, okay, what you'll find is when you go into the bar, a gin and tonic is $18. So what you've done is you have worked 31% harder for one more gin and tonic. That doesn't seem worth it, but it could just be a fluke. So let me go to exhibit number 16 real quick, if I could. I want to put a graph on the page. Don't do a lot of graphs, but here it is. It says, the title, got to read this, the increase in unit sales, that is physical volume, number of transactions, required to exactly offset a price reduction. So what we're doing on the horizontal axis, we're cutting price 1% all the way to 10. And on the vertical axis, we're asking ourselves, how much more do we have to sell to still make the same profit, which was $500,000? If you go out to the 5% line, my finger's going over, and you go up to where the dot hits, you come back over, I think you'll find it's 31.1%. Wow. It's consistent. My sessions, I don't ever say are good. They're simply consistent. This graph appears to be curved. Is that graph curved? Yeah, that graph is curved. So what it says is, man, I got to do more and more and more volume. You cannot make it up with volume if you want to run the business the way you've always run it. If you want to get rid of the sales force, if you want to get rid of delivery, if you want to get rid of credit, you can make it up with volume. But most people are happy with the business the way it is. We cannot make it up with volume. What we got to do is we got to add more gross margin. So on exhibit number 17, I say improving the gross margin by either buying it or pricing it. So we have door number 1, buy it cheaper. Door number 2, price it higher. Notice the top line. On both of those, we're going to raise the gross margin to 25.5%. We're going to add another half point, arbitrary number. In the buying potential column, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to still do $25 million of sales, but we're going to go back to our suppliers and whine, and we're going to buy things $125,000 cheaper. And that $125,000 is going to go to the gross margin line. And my gross margin is going to be $6,375,000 or 25.5%. And if you don't trust me, take 25 million times 25.5 and you get $6,375,000. The beauty of buying it cheaper is the expenses stay the same. There's no more sales, so no more variable. There's no more fixed, and the profit becomes $625,000. That's pretty nifty. It really is. So we should go to the suppliers and try to buy it better. What about the pricing it higher? Well, on the pricing it higher, we're going to raise the sales by some amount, going to raise it to 25,167. But for this example, we're still going to buy it at the original price, 18,750. So we're just looking at pricing by itself. And if you'll trust me with these mathematical numbers, they actually are correct. 6,417,000 of gross margin is exactly 25.5% of sales. Do not ask me how we got there. We only have 45 minutes, not 6 hours. Trust me, it's correct. But the variable expenses, if sales are up, the variable expenses are up. Yep, 1,250,000. The fixed expenses stay the same, and the profit becomes 659. So I got two things that could happen. Number one, we buy it cheaper, $625,000 of profit. Number two, we sell it higher, $659,000 of profit, both ending up with a gross margin percentage of 25.5%. What this says is the following: buying it cheaper is nifty, selling it higher is niftier. Absolutely, it is niftier. You should do both. Of course you could, but there's always more opportunity outbound in terms of profitability that we're generating. Always more opportunity outbound. So I got to do both, but I can't take my eye off the ball. And unfortunately, in Exhibit 18, a lot of us take our eye off the ball. What I have on exhibit number 18 is entitled Separating Pricing and Buying, and this is a strategic exhibit. The current column is the same as it was in 17. The buying column is the same as it was in 17, so you should end up with the same numbers. All I've done at the bottom is I added a little memo line. And what that says is when we took cost of goods from 18,750 to 18,625, we lowered cost of goods by 0.2%. We bought it 0.2% cheaper. All right, that was good. Here's the problem. In the old time, we used to have buyers who knew what they're doing. Today, we have computer systems, and those computer systems allow us to make dumb decisions quicker. And what I will do is I'll take that lower price from my supplier, put it into my computer system, and the computer system will give me a lower outbound price. Does it every time. Or I may decide I'm going to give my customers a little bonus by lowering their price. Whichever way it is, the one with the computer system or one strategically, let's assume if we could that we lower the outbound prices by 0.2%. And again, your computer will do this unless you jump on it. The cost of goods will be 18,625 because we've already bought it better. So we don't lose that. We've lowered the price. And the gross margin, 6,208,000. 6,208, that's lower than it was when it started. Yeah. But the variable expenses are going to go down. I'll say this again. The fixed expenses stay the same, and the profit becomes 466,667. That I can actually buy it better and mess the whole thing up if I don't control the outbound side. I need to separate buying and selling. I need you to, when you buy it cheaper, when that sales rep comes in at the end of the fourth quarter and says, have I got a deal for you? Put it in your pocket. Let's draw a conclusion. We got to move. We're in pretty good shape. Fourth conclusion, we must get control of gross margin largely through pricing. I wish I could tell you it was something other than pricing, but it's largely a pricing issue. We need to have the guts to raise prices. In the 6-hour session, when you come to Indianapolis, we'll talk about pricing a lot, but for right now, all I can do is give you the concept. All right, we started this. We said we're going to do 3 things. We're going to review the structure of the industry, which we did. It's a low profit industry, but some can break out. We talked about how to break out, and that was sales and expenses tied together, gross margin by itself, really important. And now I want to go with the third bullet point was, can we put together a little plan? I want to, if I could, on exhibit 19, have you think back to that rack suit. If you remember the rack suit plan, you probably don't. That's okay. I'm going to duplicate it here. And on exhibit number 19, I'm duplicating the rack suit plan. And what it says is the mandate for change. Oh, I stole that from the United States Congress. I love that phrase, the mandate for change. What that means is I'm going to tell you what to do, but I'm not going to stick around and help. You're on your own. Sales are going to go up 5%. That is an arbitrary number. I said it could be any number, but 5 is my minimum. It must be 5. We're going to raise the gross margin percentage, not the dollars, 0.2. We're going to have a sales to payroll gap of 2%. We're going to cut the other expenses, the non-payroll, by 0.3%, and then inventory turnover and collection period 0. And you're saying, hey, finally 2 goals I can actually reach. don't get so excited. They don't go up, but they can't go down. You can't mess up the turnover while you do their things, so no change. So what happens? Exhibit 20, again, lots of numbers, but easy to follow. Starting on the top line, sales are going to go up 5% a year. 25 goes to 26, goes to 31. That's 5% minimum number every year. The gross margin is going to go from 25 to 25.2 to 26, 2/10 every year. You can do that. Now, if I told you to go from 25 to 26 in 1 year, you might say that's impossible. But if you get it in bite-sized nuggets, that's actually doable if you work at it. I didn't say easy, realistic, attainable, doable, but not easy. The payroll is going to go up 3% a year. Everybody gets a raise. Go up to the payroll line and follow along with me the dollars. 4 million goes to 4.25, goes to 4,000,006. People are getting raises. It's just that payroll's not going up as fast as sales. We've not cut anybody off at the knees. The other expenses going from 7% of sales to 6.7 to 5.5. And if I go up and look at the dollars, they're also going up, just not real fast. Then if I put all this together, I got a profit that goes from 500,000 to, is that a typo? 1,000,009. Are you blooming kidding me? No, I am not. 1,000,009. Wow. Let's pay a bonus, shall we? At the bottom, we've got the numbers we already talked about. Gross margin 25 to 25.2 to 26. Payroll 16 to 15, 7 to 14. They're going down, but they're going up in dollars. And then the punchline. This is the Matador's moment of truth. My bottom line, 2 to 282, 6%. I believe a long time ago, I had a goal, triple my bottom line from 2 to 6, but it's going to take me 5 years to do it. Slow but steady wins the race. None of these changes are big. None of these changes are big. However, I told you, not easy. Realistic, attainable, doable, etc. I've got another summing conclusion. You probably should have a plan. You got to go back and do this for your particular business. You got to have your own plan, your own rack suit. You must have those 4 points that I had on the rack suit, but you got to come up with your own numbers. Now, I promised you I would let you ask a question privately, which I'm still going to do because I'm going to be short on time. On the cover of the handout, there's my email address, bigal6212@gmail.com. If you will email me a question, I will answer it, not today, because it's getting a bit late in the day, but I will answer it tomorrow, guaranteed, privately. Nobody will know your question except me, and nobody will know your answer except me. So you can, in fact, get that question answered and be in great shape. One more thing. I'm going to do a 30-second sales call on you. You might want to know more about what we talked about. Most of you are smart, do not want to know more about it. This is all I ever want to know. But if you want to know more, I wrote a great book called Breaking Down the Profit Barriers in Distribution, available from Barnes & Noble and from Amazon. Be delighted to have you buy it. But if you go to UID next year, I'll try to tell you everything that's in that book so you don't have to buy the stupid book. But the only thing I would ask is every company in the audience will buy 50 copies. I would appreciate it. With that, let's go out there and make more money because you deserve to, because you're nice people. I enjoy being with you today. Thank you very much.
All right. And remember to email your questions to Al at the email address on the handout. We'd like to thank Al for his presentation today. This concludes this session. Thank you very much, Al.
Thank you.